My dad humiliated me at my brother's $100,000 wedding, not knowing I secretly owned the catering company they hired Reddit stories. He mocked me in front of 280 guests, called me a failure, and seated me behind a column like an afterthought. But when I realized every plate, every dish, and every staff member in the room belonged to me, something inside me shifted from hurt to cold, surgical clarity. Hi, I'm James, 30, and I knew my dad hated me, but I didn't know he hated me enough to humiliate me in front of 280 people while clinking a champagne glass at my golden brother's $100,000 wedding. I swear to God, if Shakespeare had written dysfunctional families with open bars, this would have been his Act 1. My brother Caleb was the star of the show, Northwestern grad, finance guy, shiny BMW, the son dad, invested wisely in. I, meanwhile, was the problem child, who refused to disappear after mom died when I was 15. Dad remarried 11 months later, and stepmom arrived like a designer hurricane, threw out mom's art, redecorated the house in beige, and pretended Caleb was her biological masterpiece while I hovered in the background like a ghost refusing to leave. I escaped into work, college, 2 jobs, no sleep, graduating with $97,000 in debt, and absolutely no applause. Caleb? Graduated debt-free. Dad even gave a speech about supporting your children when it matters, conveniently forgetting he had 2. So when Caleb mailed me a wedding invitation with a handwritten note saying he wanted to rebuild our relationship, I thought, fine. One day. I can survive one day. I even offered to cater the thing at cost. He said they'd already booked someone, which stung more than it should have, but whatever. I bought a new suit, put on my best face, and walked into the kind of country club where the valet silently judges your entire family history. For 8 seconds, I actually felt welcome. Caleb hugged me in the groom's suite. Told me he was glad I came. Then I checked the seating chart. Table 17. Back row. Next to the kitchen doors. Seated with distant cousins who barely remembered my name. Caleb had seen it, approved it, and still wrote that note about wanting me there. I should have left then. But the real disaster didn't start until after the cocktails, when Dad grabbed the microphone, slurred his way into a speech about successful children, and locked eyes with me for the punchline. Some people, he said, are failures. Always have been. Stepmom laughed. And I felt something inside me finally, permanently snap. I didn't blow up. I didn't shout. I didn't throw a drink, flip a table, or do anything dramatic enough to trend online. I just stood there at table 17, smiling the tight little smile of a man calculating his exit strategy, while a string quartet played Vivaldi over his father's character assassination. Dad staggered back to his seat, still grinning like he just dropped a wisdom bomb instead of a drunk insult grenade. Stepmom leaned in to kiss his cheek, performative, glittering, satisfied. Her eyes drifted toward me again, that same expression she'd worn since the day she moved in. Why are you still here? I needed air. Outside, I took a lap around the venue, trying to talk myself into staying. It was Caleb's day. He'd invited me. He'd written a note. Maybe he didn't know about table 17. Maybe Dad's speech wasn't deliberate. Maybe I wasn't an idiot for trying one more time. Then I walked past the service entrance. 4 white Sprinter vans. Heritage Events Catering. Printed clean across the sides. My company. My fleet. My staff. My food feeding 280 people who pretended I didn't exist. 6 months ago, I'd acquired Heritage to expand into high-end weddings. I kept the branding for legacy clients, so most people booking had no idea they were dealing with Summit Catering, my actual business. Caleb certainly didn't. He'd chosen me without knowing he'd chosen me. I called my operations manager. Can you confirm Heritage is catering tonight at Olympia Fields? He checked. Yeah, big wedding. Why? I'm at that wedding. A long silence, then a quiet, horrified laugh. Oh no. I didn't say it out loud, but the truth crystallized instantly. They seated me at table 17, At an event I was catering. An event funded by my work, my staff, my company's reputation. I wasn't just the black sheep today, I was the unpaid help. When I walked back into the reception, every detail hit different. The floral centerpieces? We arranged those. The plates and glassware? Ours. The beef tenderloin guests were raving about. My sous chef's recipe. The mini creme brulees being torched for dessert? My pastry team. All of it, mine. And I was shoved behind a column next to a table of relatives who thought my name was Jason. When I returned to the room, stepmom intercepted me. Of course she did. That suit, she said, eyes flicking up and down. Did you rent it? I didn't react. Didn't blink. But right then, at 8:42 p.m. Exactly, I made a decision that settled over me like calm. If I wasn't welcome as a guest, then my company wasn't staying as the caterer. They built their little perfect wedding on my back. And I was about to take it back. I slipped out the side door like I was just taking another breather, but inside my chest? Full battlefield drumline. My hands shook with that cold, surgical clarity you only get when anger finally stops shouting and starts planning. I called my operations manager. Pull the team, I said. Silence. Then, boss, we're mid-service. I know. Pull them. Dessert hasn't even. I don't care. 20 minutes. Everything packed and in the vans. A beat. Understood. Here's the thing most people don't know about high-end catering. We bring everything. The plates. The linens. The glassware. The chafing dishes. The dessert table. The late-night snacks. Even the coffee urns and the freaking centerpiece stands. Venues like Olympia Fields provide the room. We provide the experience. So when I say, pull the team, I'm not just removing staff. I'm removing the entire wedding reception infrastructure. Inside, the band was starting the first dance, while my crew entered emergency breakdown mode. These people are pros, former hotel staff, ex-military logistics guys, pastry chefs who've survived bridezillas. We run quarterly drills for fires, floods, intoxicated guests flipping tables, yes, really. So in 7 minutes flat, the dessert station vanished. The chocolate fountain disappeared. The wedding cake, 4 tiers of handcrafted perfection, was boxed and loaded like nuclear material. Linens, plates, utensils, gone. My entire staff, gone. 3 sprinter vans, gone. The 4th, loading the last cart. Guests noticed workers moving, but nobody questioned it. At fancy venues, staff always look busy. No one thinks, oh, the entire catering company is fleeing the premises. By the time the last van rolled out, 16 minutes had passed. 16 minutes to undo a $35,000 reception. I walked straight to the venue manager's office. Knocked. She looked up, smiling professionally. Yes? I handed her my card. Have the father of the groom direct all questions to my legal counsel. She blinked. Looked at the card. Looked at me. Back at the card. Are you? You'll figure it out soon, I said. Probably when someone asks where dessert went. Then I walked out, calm as a monk, heart pounding like a drumline. I got in my car. Ignored the 17 missed calls already lighting up my screen. Turned onto the road. Rolled down the window. Behind me, 280 people were about to discover the consequences of seating me at table 17. And I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. By the time I hit I-57, my phone looked like it was having a medical emergency. Buzzing nonstop, vibrating against the cup holder like it was trying to escape the car. I ignored all of it. Caleb's calls, Dad's calls, unknown numbers, even a few cousins who probably wanted to know what war I'd just started. I blasted Foo Fighters, cracked the window, and let the November air hit my face. For the first time that night, I could breathe. Meanwhile, based on reports from several highly enthusiastic witnesses, the reception hall was experiencing what professionals call an "oh no" moment. The venue manager walked into the prep kitchen expecting to find a bustling dessert station. Instead, she found an empty room. Empty racks. Empty counters. Zero staff. She checked the loading dock. Gone. Every van gone. Panic rippled through the staff. Guests started asking questions. And then the shouting began. Stepmom hit DEFCON 1 immediately. Guests reported hearing her shrieking at venue employees like they'd personally eaten the chocolate fountain. She demanded to speak to the catering director, unaware she'd insulted him an hour earlier. Dad? Still drunk. Kept saying he wouldn't dare. Like I was 16 and grounded, not the owner of the literal catering company. Caleb was apparently running around the venue like a groom in a soap opera wedding episode, asking random staff where the food had gone. Someone finally explained. Sir, your brother owns the catering company. Rumor has it he just stood there for a full 3 seconds, blinking like someone had unplugged him. By the time the guests realized dessert wasn't coming, half the hall was whispering, the DJ was stalling with extra songs, and Stepmom was attempting to rally people with a tone usually reserved for cult leaders or malfunctioning pageant moms. I didn't hear any of this firsthand. I heard it the next morning. Because Sunday came with 52 missed calls, 90 plus texts, 8 voicemails, and 1 extremely stressed email from the venue manager. I made coffee, fed my dog, took Max to the park, ignored everything. Finally, around noon, I called my operations manager. You good? He asked. I'm great, I said. How's the team? Unified in terror and admiration. Also, what was that last night? Hostile environment clause, I said. Page 14 of the heritage contract. You actually used it? I actually used it. No regrets? Not a single one. He exhaled. Well, good. Because your phone is about to explode again. He was right. Because Caleb had finally worked up the courage to send the message I'd been expecting. What the hell did you do? Oh, buddy. He had no idea. Caleb didn't wait for me to answer his text. He called immediately, voice tight, frantic, already halfway through a meltdown. James, what the hell did you do? I sipped my coffee like I was on a slow Sunday morning talk show. Morning, Caleb. Don't do that, calm voice. You sabotaged my wedding. People are furious. The bar shut down early because there was no dessert, no coffee, no late-night snacks. What were you thinking? That I didn't want to keep catering after Dad publicly called me a failure. That was one comment. He made several. He was drunk. And he's been drunk for the last 15 years of our family dynamic, but sure. Caleb made this strangled noise that was half sigh, half scream. You ruined the biggest day of my life. No, I said. Dad and Stepmom ruined it. I just stopped providing free labor. It wasn't free, we paid. You paid my company. I corrected. You did not pay me. And you seated me at table 17. So what? It was a crowded wedding. Someone had to sit back there. Your brother, I said, did not have to sit back there. He went quiet. You approved the seating chart. I continued. Don't pretend you didn't know exactly what table 17 meant. I didn't think you'd care. Really comforting, Caleb. Thanks. I invited you, he said, voice cracking. I tried to include you. You invited me so you could feel good about yourself. I said. Not because you wanted me there. That's not true. Then why was I the only immediate family member shoved behind a column next to the kitchen door? Why did no one introduce me as your brother? Why did you smile while Dad humiliated me in front of everyone? Silence. A long, heavy silence. Finally, I didn't know what to do. You stand up, I said. That's what you do. You say, Dad, enough? You say, Stepmom, knock it off. You tell the people you love that they matter. I'm sorry, he whispered. I believed him, and it still wasn't enough. But that doesn't undo the choices you made, I said. And it doesn't change that when your family tried to embarrass me at an event I was catering, I stopped catering. You humiliated me. No, I said. I let your choices humiliate themselves. Caleb broke. Fully broke. Voice shaking. Please. James, don't hate me. I don't hate you, I said softly. But I don't protect people who don't protect me, he cried. I let him. When he finally hung up, my phone buzzed again. Dad. Stepmom. A swarm of numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all, until one message popped up from a cousin who'd been seated near the front. I saw everything. They deserved it. Best wedding I've ever been to. I actually laughed. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the family disappointment. I was the plot twist. Monday morning arrived like a hangover for everyone except me. I woke up well-rested, brewed coffee, and opened my email to find the thing I'd been waiting for. An 11-page legal threat from Dad's attorney. Apparently, I owed them a full refund of the $22,000 deposit, $75,000 in damages, a written apology, and my favorite, a promise never to engage in vindictive business practices again. My lawyer called me within minutes, practically giddy. This, he said, is the funniest lawsuit threat I've seen in 20 years. We drafted a response that could have doubled as a surgical demonstration. 6 pages. Pure precision. Every claim dismantled with contract clauses, staff incident reports, the venue manager's notes, and my personal favorite, the security footage showing Dad slurring insults at me while Stepmom hovered like a vulture in sequins. The footage was brutal. You could see Dad stumbling, pointing, getting in my space. You could see Stepmom smirk when she asked if I rented my suit. You could hear guests go silent. It was everything my lawyer needed, and everything Dad didn't want anyone else to see. Pressure works wonders. By Wednesday, the threats softened. By Thursday, Dad's attorney proposed discussion. By Friday, they accepted a settlement. 45% refund, NDA, and a release of all future claims. Translation. They paid me to stop talking. Stepmom, however, didn't know when to stop. She started messaging my employees on LinkedIn, fishing for dirt. Big mistake. My attorney sent a cease and desist so sharp it could have sliced through marble. She backed off instantly. Meanwhile, drama kept unfolding like a soap opera no one admitted watching. First twist, Caleb's wife, Kira, reached out through a cousin. She wanted to meet. We met at a Starbucks in Lincoln Park. She looked exhausted, not wedding exhausted, not newlywed exhausted. More like, my entire family blew up and I just realized I'm married into a cult. Exhausted. I want to apologize, she said immediately. For the seating chart. For how you were treated. For not speaking up. You don't owe me an apology, I said. None of that was your doing. No, she said, eyes fierce. But I should have pushed harder. When I saw you were at table 17, I told Caleb it was wrong. He said you wouldn't care. I felt something twist in my chest. He admitted to me, she continued, that your stepmom made the seating chart. And he approved it because he wanted you to know where you stood. I went still. She kept talking. And there's more. She manipulated Dad into putting everything in her name. She's tied into Caleb's condo. She's controlling the finances. He's only now realizing how deep it goes. Of course she was. It was exactly her style, domestic dictatorship in designer heels. We talked another half hour. She was smart, genuine, nothing like stepmom's polished toxicity. As we stood to leave, she said, "We're planning a small gathering in a few months. Just the people who actually care. I'd like you there. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking." I left the Starbucks feeling something I hadn't expected. Not vindication. Not smugness. Not even satisfaction. Just clarity. My revenge wasn't the catering pull. It wasn't the chaos at the reception. It wasn't even the legal settlement. My revenge was simpler. I stopped playing the role they wrote for me. And the whole family script collapsed without me. 3 months passed. 3 months of total, delicious silence. No calls from Dad. No guilt texts from Caleb. No cryptic Facebook posts from stepmom about ungrateful people. Just peace, profit, and the steady hum of a catering empire expanding faster than my accountant preferred. Summit Catering was doing numbers that would have made my old taco truck weep with pride. We landed 3 new corporate clients, hired a VP of operations, and finally upgraded from the beat-up office chairs we'd been using since the Obama administration. Meanwhile, quiet intel trickled in from the extended family grapevine. Dad and stepmom were fighting nonstop. House listed. Finances strained. Stepmom's party planning, business, collapsing after multiple clients realized she'd been double booking, canceling vendors behind their backs, and then pretending she'd save the day. She'd been running a one-woman scam operation. She just finally got caught. And then came the call from Meridian Banquet Hall. A panicked woman on the line. Her husband's retirement party, 300 guests, was in 4 days. Her caterer had mysteriously cancelled. I asked for the contract number. Her caterer was, of course, Heritage Events. The cancellation request was emailed by none other than stepmom herself. She'd sabotaged this woman's event assuming she could rebook at a profit, and then couldn't. Classic. The client was crying on the phone. Embarrassed. Desperate. Trying not to fall apart. And she reminded me a little too much of my own mother, the way her voice tried to stay strong while everything else shook. So I said yes. We pulled off a miracle in 4 days. The party was flawless. The husband cried. The client hugged me and tipped my staff $5,000. Monday morning, Dad called. He sounded small. Your stepmother is in real trouble, he said. She's losing clients. People are threatening lawsuits. Could you maybe talk to someone? Smooth things over? For family? I laughed. For family? Dad, you made it very clear who your family was. That was a mistake. I know that now. Good. You can learn from it. She's your stepmother. No, I said. She's your wife. She made choices. She can live with them. He hesitated. I thought maybe we could fix things. You and me. There's nothing to fix, I said. There's just distance. And I'm finally okay with that. 2 days later, Caleb called. Frazzled. Upset. Lost. Stepmom destroyed everything, he said. Kira moved out. She filed for divorce. She said she can't watch me enable toxic people anymore. I didn't gloat. I didn't poke. I didn't even say, I told you so. Though God knows it was right there on the tip of my tongue. Instead, I said, then start choosing better. Not for me. Not for stepmom. Not for Dad. For himself. By the end of the month, Caleb was in therapy, living in a studio, learning how to be a person without everyone else's expectations. Kira had moved to Wicker Park, starting fresh and, based on her texts, absolutely thriving. As for stepmom? She was stocking shelves at Target. Dad was still working at 68, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Their perfect facade was gone. And me? I was sitting in my office, my company, my staff, my life, when the phone rang. Another new client. Summit Catering, I answered. This is James. Because that's the thing they never understood. I was never table 17. I was the person who owned the room. Business kept growing, the way neglected things sometimes explode into their full potential once no one is stepping on their throat anymore. By spring, Summit Catering was doing so well that I had to make a choice no one in my family ever expected of me. I bought a building. Not rented. Not leased. Bought. A 2-story brick warehouse on the southwest side, big enough for a commercial kitchen, tasting room, and office space. The kind of place that felt like permanence, like a life being built instead of patched together. My contractors joked they'd never seen a client so annoyingly specific about storage plans. "You sure you don't want a smaller space?" one asked. "No," I said. "For once, I want something that's bigger than I need." And I meant it. The first person I invited to tour the finished space wasn't Dad. It wasn't Caleb. It wasn't anyone from the family whose approval I'd wasted years trying to earn. It was my employees. Because they were the ones who'd built this with me, shift by shift, weekend by weekend, wedding after wedding. We held a soft opening. Pizza, beer, a DJ who refused to stop playing throwback hits. My sous chef took over the music around 11 p.m. and declared it Nostalgia Hour. Everyone was laughing. Relaxed. Whole. And for the first time in my adult life, I realized something. This was my family. The one I chose. The one that chose me back. I went home that night feeling light. Lighter than I'd felt since I was a teenager. That lasted 4 days. Because that's when Dad showed up. Not a call. Not a text. He showed up. I was walking out of the new building at 7 p.m., shutting off the lights, locking things up, when I saw him standing next to his car, leaning against the hood like he'd been there a while. Coat too thin for the weather. Face older than I remembered. Eyes tired. He straightened when he saw me. "James." I stopped 6 feet away. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see the place." He gestured vaguely at the building. "Heard it's impressive. No tours today." He winced but didn't leave. "I also wanted to talk." "I didn't ask you to." "That doesn't mean I don't need to." The anger I expected didn't show up. Just wariness. Distance. Practicality. "What do you want, Dad?" His throat worked. He looked down, then up, then past me, like the words were fighting him on the way out. "I'm leaving her." I didn't react. "She burned everything down," he said. "Finances. Friendships. The business. Our savings gone." He shook his head. "I should have seen it. I didn't. I'm paying for that now." I crossed my arms. "And this involves me because..." He swallowed. "Because I don't have anybody left. That was your choice." "I know." His voice cracked. "Believe me, I know." He took a breath, steadied himself. "I'm not asking for money," he said. "I'm not asking for help. I need to apologize. Face to face. Before I lose the nerve." I didn't move. "When your mother died," he said, "I was drowning. And she..." He couldn't say stepmom's name. Made it easy not to feel anything. I mistook that for help. For stability. And I let her control everything because it was easier than thinking. He rubbed his face with shaking hands. "I let her push you aside. I let her rewrite our family. I let her isolate Caleb. I let her convince me that loving you was inconvenient." His voice broke completely. "You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve any of it." Silence stretched between us. Long, heavy, honest. "James," he whispered, "I never stopped being proud of you. I just stopped telling you. And I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry." The wind cut between us, cold and thin. I didn't hug him. I didn't yell. I didn't forgive him. But for the first time in my life, I believed him. He took a shaky step back. "Anyway," he murmured, "that's all. I won't bother you again." He turned toward his car. "Dad." He froze. I didn't step closer, but my voice softened. "You should come to a tasting sometime," I said. "Not for a big talk. Just to try the food." He blinked hard, nodded once, and got into his car before emotion could embarrass him. I watched him drive off into the dark. Not healed. Not fixed. But maybe starting. Dad didn't show up the next week. Or the week after. I figured the invitation would evaporate in his mind, filed away under things a better father might follow up on. I wasn't waiting, and I definitely wasn't hoping. Life was moving forward with or without him. But then, on a Thursday afternoon, my receptionist buzzed my office. James? There's a man out front asking if he can try the tasting menu. Says he's your father. I froze for half a second. Is he wearing a decent coat this time? She glanced over. Not really. Okay. Bring him to the private room. When I stepped in, Dad was standing awkwardly near the tasting table, hands tucked into his sleeves like he wasn't sure he belonged inside a building he hadn't paid for. He'd shaved, but unevenly, patchy like he'd done it in the car mirror. His posture was smaller somehow. Less command, more apology. You came, I said. You invited me. He answered, voice quiet. We sat. I sent in a simple tasting flight, seared salmon with miso glaze, short rib over polenta, a roasted beet salad that has converted more beet haters than I can count. Foods that didn't demand conversation, but allowed space for it. He took a bite of the short rib and let out a soft, involuntary sound. This is... He shook his head. James, this is better than anything I've ever eaten. Thanks, I said. It's one of our staples. No, Dad said, leaning forward. I mean it. I'd been bragging about the wrong son for 20 years. I didn't know what to do with that. So I ignored it. We ate in silence for a while. A comfortable silence, one we hadn't had since I was a kid. Finally, he cleared his throat. I talked to Caleb, he said. He's trying. I know. He wants to fix things. He needs to fix himself first. I said. Then maybe we'll see. Dad nodded slowly. You're right. Another silence. Then, I got a job at a hardware store. Part-time. It's not much, but it's honest. Good, I said. How's it feel? He exhaled. Like being 20 again, only with back pain. I cracked a small smile. He saw it. It startled him a little, like he hadn't expected one. And you? He asked. You're okay? I'm better than okay, I said simply. Took a long time. But I'm good. He nodded, looking down at his plate. I missed all of it. He murmured. You didn't have to. I know, he whispered. There was no big movie moment. No embrace. No sudden healing. Just two people sitting at a table, acknowledging the wreckage and the quiet truth. Some relationships don't end. They just restart in a smaller, more honest shape. We finished the meal. He thanked every staff member on his way out, awkwardly, but sincerely. Then, at the door, he turned back. James, he said, I'm proud of you. Not because of this place. Because you became someone better than I taught you to be. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded. He left, shoulders straighter than when he arrived. And for the second time in my life, I watched him drive away. But this time, it didn't feel like losing anything. It felt like the beginning of something new. Not a family the way it used to be. Just something real. Dad showing up once was surprising. Dad showing up again, 2 weeks later, was something closer to historic. This time he came on a Saturday morning, wearing a coat that actually fit and holding a white cardboard box like it contained contraband. He waited by the front desk until I walked into the lobby. What's in the box? I asked. He shifted, suddenly sheepish. I baked. I stared. You baked? Cookies, he clarified, lifting the box an inch. Or something resembling cookies. Your mother used to make them when you were little. Thought I'd try. He opened the lid. They were tragic. Misshapen, lumpy, some overbaked, some underbaked, all of them apparently flavored with effort rather than technique. A couple had merged into a single mutant super cookie. But the smell hit me with a sucker punch. Warm cinnamon. Vanilla. A hint of nutmeg. My mother's recipe. She used to make them on Sunday afternoons, putting half the batch in a tin labeled for the boys and pretending she didn't see us sneaking extras. Dad cleared his throat. They don't look right. No, I said. They don't? I picked one up anyway and took a bite. It was terrible. Absolutely terrible. Dad washed my face. Bad? Horrendous, I said. He winced. But, I added, they're close. Something in his shoulders eased, not pride exactly, but relief that I hadn't laughed him out of the building. He exhaled shakily. I thought maybe we could try again sometime. Together. The request was small. The meaning wasn't. I nodded once. Yeah. We can. That nearly undid him. We went to the tasting room. I made coffee. He told me he'd moved into a small one-bedroom near the river. Said it felt weird to live somewhere quiet, no curated decorations, no mirrors angled for maximum aesthetic effect, no stepmom monologues about elevated domestic spaces. Just silence. What happened with her? I asked. He rubbed his jaw, choosing his words. She needed control, he said finally. Over me. Over Caleb. Over everything. He shook his head. I let her. I thought it made life easier. But all it did was make me smaller. And now I'm realizing I let her erase your mother. And I let that happen because it hurt less than remembering her. He blinked hard. That's on me, he said. Not her. Me. We talked for nearly an hour, about Mom, about Caleb, about the years we missed. He didn't make excuses. He didn't rewrite history. He owned all of it in a way I never thought he could. And then, as he stood to leave, he said something I didn't expect. I want to be a better man for the years I have left. I can't change what I was. But I can change what I am. He paused. If you'll let me. I took a breath. I'm not ready for father-son weekends, I said honestly. I'm not ready for holidays or big reunions. But coffee? Cookies? A meal now and then? He nodded. That's enough. And we build from there. His eyes brightened just a little. Yeah. We build. He left with the empty cookie box tucked under his arm, walking a little taller. I watched him go, then went back inside and tossed the leftover cookies into the trash, except one. One I kept. Not because it tasted good. Not because it looked right. But because it was the first thing my father had made for me in 20 years. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Dad and I kept meeting, slowly, cautiously, like two people relearning a language they should have been fluent in but never really spoke. Sometimes it was coffee in the tasting room. Sometimes it was a sandwich at a quiet deli near his apartment. Once, when he got bold, he invited me to watch a Bulls game at his place. I said no to that one. Not out of cruelty, just pacing. Healing doesn't sprint. It walks. Meanwhile, my company was exploding in the best possible way. The retirement party client turned into a pipeline of corporate referrals. Law firms, real estate groups, medical associations. Our spring bookings tripled. My events director started joking that we needed a second me. Every once in a while, I caught myself wanting to tell Dad about a big contract or a successful event. Old instincts die hard. But I waited until the instinct didn't hurt. Then, the surprise came from someone I hadn't expected to hear from again. Kira. She texted me one evening around 7 p.m. Hey, I know things are messy, but I thought you should know, Caleb filed for divorce today. It's amicable. He's trying to untangle himself from all the damage. He's doing better. Really better. The therapy is helping. Just figured you'd want to know. I stared at the message for nearly a minute. Not out of shock. Out of something softer. I typed back. I'm glad he's doing the work. He needed to. She replied. You both did. For different reasons. She wasn't wrong. A few days later, Caleb texted me for the first time since his meltdown over the wedding. Can we meet? Nothing heavy. I just want to talk. I agreed to coffee at a neutral cafe, not our childhood diner, not his neighborhood, not mine. Switzerland. He arrived looking like a guy who'd been living in a mental hurricane and finally found the eye of the storm. He was thinner. More tired. But clearer. Straighter in the spine. Hey, he said. Hey. We sat. We ordered. We stared at our cups for an awkward 20 seconds before he spoke. I'm sorry. I let him continue. I let her control everything, he said. Stepmom. Dad. The narrative. I didn't realize how much of my personality was just avoiding conflict. Yeah, I said. I noticed. He huffed a laugh that was half-grown. I should have stood up for you at the wedding. Yes, I said plainly. You should have. His shoulders sagged. Not dramatically, just in a way that said he'd expected the truth and was relieved it wasn't softened. I wasn't trying to humiliate you, he said. But I also didn't care enough not to. That was honest. Painful, but honest. He swallowed. I hated that you built a life without me. Without us. Without the family. He shook his head. But you had to. I see that now. I didn't want to build it without you, I admitted. But you didn't make space for me. He stared at the table. I want to be better. I know. He looked up, eyes brighter. Can we not go back? But go forward? Slowly, I said. Slow is fine. We talked for an hour about nothing dramatic, work, hobbies, the dog he was considering adopting. He asked questions that weren't performative. He listened without defensiveness. For the first time in a decade, he acted like a brother instead of an echo of stepmom's curated world. As we stood to leave, he looked at me with something like hope. I'm planning a small dinner with people I actually like. Thought maybe, if you wanted to come. Send me the date, I said. He grinned. Wide. Real. Walking back to my car, I realized something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Not revenge. Not righteousness. Not superiority. Just peace. The family I grew up with was gone, and maybe it needed to be. But the family that was forming now? Smaller. Quieter. Healthier. Built slowly and without illusions. And for the first time, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was letting things grow. Dad wasn't fixed. Caleb wasn't fixed. I definitely wasn't fixed. But for the first time in my life, none of us were pretending. And that alone felt like a kind of miracle. A few months later, Caleb invited me to that small dinner, 8 people at a quiet Italian place, nothing fancy. No seating charts, no table hierarchies, no speeches about legacy. Just pasta, good wine, and people who actually wanted to be in the same room. Caleb didn't make a toast. He didn't announce anything. He just leaned over halfway through the meal and said quietly, I'm glad you're here. And I believed him. Dad took longer. We weren't suddenly bonding over sports or grilling in the backyard like some sitcom redemption arc. But every couple weeks, he'd show up with a new batch of catastrophically bad cookies. The batches got better. Never great. But better. Once, I caught him glancing around my kitchen during a tasting and whispering, Your mother would have loved this place. It landed softer than I expected. Not a manipulation. Not a weapon. Just the truth he'd finally earned the right to say. We weren't a fixed family. We were a rebuilt one, smaller, scarred, strangely sturdy. One evening, after a long day of events, I stood alone in the new building, my building, listening to the hum of refrigerators and the echo of a space built from nothing but stubbornness and spite. I thought about Table 17. About the version of me who sat there, humiliated and angry, wanting to matter to people who never intended to make room for me. He didn't know it then, but they hadn't pushed him to the margins. They'd pushed him into his life. Now I had a thriving company, Dozens of employees who trusted me, a brother who was finally becoming his own person, and a father trying, slowly, clumsily, but genuinely, to earn a place in my world again. Stepmom? She stayed exactly where consequences put her. And me? I was no longer the guy shoved behind a pillar next to the kitchen doors. I was the one who owned the building, the business, the story. I flicked off the lights, locked up, and headed out into the night, my life finally quiet, steady, and entirely mine.